negativity and divisiveness. We have nothing for them. We are here to educate people about our respective views. Joseph is welcome to say what he wants to say. It is a free country. This is a free place. Speaker's Corner has freedom. He can say what he wants respectfully without instigating hate or mass murder or any form of extremism. Likewise, I am under the same rules. I can say what I want, represent my faith without being an extremist or without being repulsive towards Joseph, his people and his faith. Okay? Equal terms.
Okay, so basically,
Agreed?
you just stipulated all the agreements of Salam Corner, so I don't think I need to introduce anymore. What I'm going to do is, inshallah, like I said, have a nice civilized discussion. No shouting. We're not here for the ego to win a point over one another. We're here for genuine dawah, and genuine dawah is that you give dawah to the person, not to your opinion of the person. So I'll leave it to you guys, inshallah. Who wants to start? Should we get Joseph to start?
I just want to have a quick question. Joseph was going around recently, and we had a discussion on Jewish and Muslim history in the past. My argument was that the Muslims were, generally speaking, throughout their history, throughout the Muslim civilization, from all the way China to North Africa, Jewish people found solace, refuge with the Muslims. Jews flourished for over 1,000 years, and I gave references. And Joseph had some reservations about those references, and he was coming to hijab, he was coming to other people, but myself. He never came to me to challenge me on those views. So we are now in front of.
So is that the topic today?
No. This is a question I want to, deal with before we go into another.
So you mentioned one source, and I think it's probably deal with it very quickly, then move on to the subject at hand. You mentioned sources which I'd never heard of at the time.
Right.
I went away and looked into them.
You mentioned one of them in particular.
Petrus, you said?
It was Saffron Petre.
Saffron.
No,
So
sorry. This is a source mentioned by Karen Armstrong in her history of Jerusalem.
So what I would propose,
I'm giving the direct source where you can actually find this.
and what I propose is, while we're talking about the subject, if somebody can look up if there's any Jewish source called Saffron Petrus.
No, Petre Saffron.
Petrus Saffron, because I've never heard of it, and I don't think
I
it
will
exists.
give you
That's the number of
I'll give you the exact.
Okay, you've got my Twitter channel at Israel Advocacy at Israel underscore.
You have a PDF.
You are live on Al Jazeera.
Can you get my book out? Okay, and get the appendix. I'm going to give you the reference right now. Right now, the page number, the book, so that you can go and check it. So I was right about every single reference I gave you in that video. I will stand by it. I will produce evidence to that effect.
Okay, so
if I fail to do, because I like to talk with credibility, with evidence, with sources. And if I'm wrong, I will always admit I've been wrong.
Okay.
Maybe I got the name wrong.
That's what I think's happened. I think you've got
but the reference is true.
Try to find it.
Okay, find the PDF and I'll give you.
Saffron Petrus.
Saffron Petre or Petre Saffron, something like that. Oh, yeah.
So it's probably.
It's an anonymous Jewish source from the 9th century. Karen Armstrong, in her book, A History of Jerusalem, mentions this source and quotes it. Okay, and I will, because I've written an article on this, how the Jews lived with the Muslims and how they flourished in all these fields, and we had a long discussion on that.
So we don't have to go over all.
Today we want to talk about extremism, right? Why are we talking about extremism? Because a lot of people have been throwing things all over the place, right? And I've seen you on Twitter, you're very active, and you were kind of agreeing with these people. Tommy Robinson supporters. Some of them are Tommy Robinson.
Supporters have I been supported?
There is one individual, I don't want to honor him by naming him, but you know the one I'm talking about. You are very active with him on Twitter.
So I will just put my. I've been bottled by the EDL for standing with Muslims.
Okay.
I put up videos criticising Tommy Robinson on my channel, Israel Advocacy Movement.
Okay.
So I think to associate me with Tommy Robinson is disingenuous because I've got no association with Tommy Robinson.
Great. You have no association. I accept that, but you have been seen agreeing with open Tommy Robinson supporters on Twitter.
I'm not aware that I am.
Okay.
If I've agreed with a tweet that somebody's put out, and that person then agrees with Tommy Robinson, that doesn't mean that
Twitter
by that definition, there will be people that you will have agreed with who've done who have aligned themselves with people that do horrendous things. There is someone at this park who used to be a cameraman for people without going.
You will never see me tweeting Anjum Chowdhury or agreeing with him.
No. no,
never.
Anjem Choudhury.
Even if Anjem Choudhury said,
Adnan, you're not saying that I am tweeting Tommy Robinson. You're saying that I am tweeting in favour of somebody who you're saying supports Tommy Robinson.
Yes.
Now there are thousands of people in the UK that support Tommy Robinson.
Yes.
Me knowing who doesn't.
You think that's a good thing?
No, I think it's a bad thing. I don't think extremism in any of its forms. Yeah. So I'll give you an example of Tommy Robinson. I think there are things that Tommy Robinson has done that actually were commendable. And there are things that he's done that are beyond the pale. So I'll just give some context to that. Can I finish my point? So when anybody, be they Muslim, non-Muslim, right, left, it doesn't matter, when they call out extremism from any community, so when Tommy Robinson was going at Al Ansharoon and when he was putting the spotlight on some of the grooming gangs of Rotherham, I think that was commendable. But then when he starts using language like calling Muslims Musrats and campaigning for no more mosques, for me that then goes beyond the pale. And so I think with any of these mainstream movements, one of the biggest things that the liberal media in this country has got terribly wrong is they haven't been able to differentiate between ordinary Muslims and extremists, and they bundle everybody together.
Using your logic,
Yeah.
has Anjem Choudhury ever done anything commendable in his life, to your knowledge? Like you just mentioned Tommy Robinson, I see them as equals. I see them as the same, two different sides of the same coin, right? Tommy Robinson and Anjem Choudhury, right? So just like you have seen commendable things in Tommy Robinson, right?
I'm sure Anjem Choudhury has done things that
are you aware of them?
No, I'm not. But that's
Why
fine.
not? Why not? You are quite aware of it.
Adnan, can I finish my point?
He was one of the students.
He's the person I'm talking to.
Can I finish? Yeah, sure. Well, I'll just try and make my point.
Yeah.
So, what
So-
happened?
so
Can I
I-
Adnan,
Yeah,
let
sure,
me speak.
sure.
What I'm trying to say with Tommy Robinson is Tommy Robinson is the figurehead for what I would consider quite an extreme movement, a violent movement, a movement that there shouldn't be things
Islamophobic.
Like completely anti-Muslim bigotry, 100%.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to say is that was able to emerge because the moderates, the liberals, were unable to differentiate, and so they allowed the only people who were saying anything were the right, were the far right. And that enabled the mass movement to emerge because the moderates were so incapable of dealing with extremism because they have this warped view where they see all Muslims as the same. And they're not. There's huge differentiation.
If you were seen associating with a Nazi or someone who agrees with Nazis, for example, it's an example. You being a Jewish gentleman, wait. You being a Jewish.
Just name who it is, please, because this is really
Steve from the
Steve.
park.
Is Steve here? Because he was here 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Can I ask him? Is he a Tommy Robinson supporter?
Yes, he has said it on video.
Yeah, okay.
He has said it on video.
So I, to use a Muslim expression, I threw myself for that because I am not aligned with Tommy Robinson.
I'm sure you're not.
People say that with
I'm sure you're not, and I believe that. You being a Jewish gentleman who has, I'm pretty sure you are aware of the history of the Jewish people when it comes to anti-Semitism and the sufferings they have had in the West in particular, right? All the pogroms and the Holocaust and all that, you being aware of that, you, out of all people, must be the most careful person when it comes to hate and extremism against a vulnerable minority like the Muslims are in this country. You should be standing next to us, Muslims. You should be protesting against Islamophobes and people like Tommy Robinson.
I've been bottled by the EDL standing in solidarity with Muslims, not once but twice.
But we don't see that on Twitter.
If you actually followed me, you would see it. So there's one video on my YouTube.
Can we go on your Twitter account now?
Yeah. On my YouTube account. If you go on my YouTube
Twitter,
account,
our Twitter.
No. Because the video which I'm talking about is too long for Twitter. Twitter, you get 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So 2 instances where I've been bottled by the EDL. How many people in this crowd here? There's quite a large crowd. How many of you have been bottled by the EDL?
We nearly got killed, but that's
No. So we've got there's 3 of us. There's 3 of us.
He was punched. He was
No, I saw
punched
that
and
video. I saw that. That was
nearly
brutal.
killed.
That was brutal.
So there are examples. I've been threatened.
Adnan,
death threats.
what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say. So the EDL went to Downing Street.
Yeah.
I stood in solidarity with the Muslims and took a stand against the EDL because I'm against all forms of bigotry. The second time,
All forms of bigotry.
Yeah, the second time.
I will use these words against you.
Yeah. The second time was actually they didn't attack me because I was standing in solidarity with Muslims. They attacked me because they thought I was a Muslim, which was just as horrendous because I was wearing a big knitted kippah. And then the weirdest thing happened. One of them screamed, "Actually, this guy's not a Muslim, he's a Jew," and they all stopped attacking me. It was the weirdest thing to see extremists stop attacking someone because because he's Jewish. So for me, I have nothing to do with the ADL. I've opposed them throughout my political career. Like, that is a career, but from my political life.
Are you a Zionist?
100%.
Okay. There was a direct link between a Zionist think tank and Tommy Robinson. Are you aware of that? And British newspapers reported it. That apparently, as they claim, that some of the funding of people like Tommy Robinson is coming from
Adnan, what's
Zionist think tank.
Adnan, what is a Zionist?
You tell us.
No, I'm asking you, because you named the Zionist think tank, so I'm asking, what is a Zionist? No, Adnan, you introduced the phrase, so explain to the camera what a Zionist is.
To me, a Zionist...
Not to you, what is the definition of a
What I
Zionist?
understand. I can only tell you what I understand from Zionism. Zionism is a political ideology which doesn't have the support of Orthodox Jewish community in Britain and across the world. There are many Orthodox Jewish people who are against Zionism. Zionism is a political ideology that came to prominence in the 19th century with the advent of Theodor Herzl, who proposed this idea of a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. Particularly Palestine, because the British Empire offered Uganda as an option, but they insisted on Palestine, Zion, they call the Zion. So the return of the Jewish people, by hook or by crook, to Palestine is, in a nutshell, Zionism.
Okay, so
is that accurate?
No. Okay. A Zionist is simply somebody that supports the state of Israel as a national home for the Jewish people, not at the expense of anybody else. So if you support a two-state solution, you support Palestine in the West Bank and Gaza, and Israel in the land in between that. Can I just 2 minutes? 2 minutes.
Let him finish. Let him finish. He has the right to finish what he has to say.
Anybody that supports a two-state solution, so Palestine alongside of Israel, is by definition a Zionist. And so, what you may be right. Potentially, there is somebody or an organisation that self-identifies as Zionist and also supports Tommy Robinson. But any government in the world that supports the existence of the state of Israel, any Muslim in this park that supports the state of Israel's existing, not at the expense of Palestinians, Arabs, or anybody else, they are by definition a Zionist. So maybe you're right. Maybe there are Zionists, maybe Christian Zionists, maybe Jewish Zionists, but who knows? Maybe right-wing Zionists, maybe left-wing Zionists that endorse Tommy Robinson. But it means nothing.
But why?
The definition of Zionism is literally captures most of the moderates in the world today, because most moderates, be they supporters of the Palestinian cause or not, support the state of Israel.
So you don't, as a Zionist, you don't support right-wing hatred against Muslims in Britain?
No, and I will stand in as a publicly
you
on
will
camera.
stand with Muslims.
Publicly on camera. If there is ever a far-right march against the Muslim community in the UK, reach out to me on Twitter. I will happily
So
stand
do you
in
think
solidarity.
Islamophobia is real? Like anti-Semitism is real? Do you believe Islamophobia is real? It does exist, and people are dying because of Islamophobia.
I think there's distinctions between anti-Semitism and Islamophobia.
Of course there are distinctions.
But I 100% believe there are. So to go back to Tommy Robinson as an example, when he uses language like Musrat, that's not talking liberal values and wanting it. That's literally using what I would consider vile language.
Why do you think Tommy Robinson can get away with that language while people using the same language against Jewish people wouldn't get away with it? Why do you think that's the case? And I'm not.
What are you smoking?
I am not.
Tommy Robinson is blacklisted on all social.
He's still walking. Is he free at the moment?
So again, Tommy Robinson has been incarcerated several times.
Not because of Islamophobia, because of breaking the court rules and all that, for contempt of court. Not because of Islamophobia.
Tommy Robinson is shunned by most people in the UK. This is a very liberal country, a very anti-racist country.
Of course, Britain is a beautiful country with amazing liberal, tolerant people living in it. British people are some of the most generous and loving people in the world. If they were not that, then we Muslims would have been dead, because for the last 20 years the amount of poison that has been pumped through the British media into the minds of the British people, we the Muslims would have been dead by now. If the British people were not a great people, were not a tolerant people, were not a generous people, we believe they are. That's why they are rejecting people like Tommy Robinson. Let me finish very quickly. So why is the government not taking action against people like Tommy Robinson and other Islamophobes open. If anyone tweeted against the Jewish people, would be incarcerated immediately, rightly so. But why are the Muslims treated differently? Why do you think that's the case?
Okay, Adnan, I don't know if you've been paying attention. That's all I'll finish. And let's calm down as well. We're getting quite heated. And I actually think we're on the same side here, so it's very bizarre. If you've been paying attention to the news recently, there has been so many cases of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. There's been a 15,000-page dossier handed into the Equality and Human Rights Commission on anti-Semitism. Not one of those anti-Semites has been incarcerated. So the idea that if you say something anti-Semitic or anti-Muslim, then you will be incarcerated, that's not manifest.
Let me correct you. Let me correct you there. Recently we had the election, right? Jeremy Corbyn was being accused of anti-Semitism without substance. There is
Let's go there.
There is not a statement Jeremy Corbyn has made throughout his 40 years of political career where he said anything anti-Jewish.
Okay,
let me stop there. There are statements made by Boris Johnson. Anti-Muslim statements, openly anti-Muslim statements, in different places at different times, in different on different platforms, and yet we have the British Prime Minister now. Boris Johnson is the British Prime Minister. So we saw the injustice there.
Adnan,
on the one hand, you can see someone moral, noble.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes.
Okay, let's go there. Let's reset the debate, and this is the conversation.
Okay, let's give me one statement made by him which is anti-Semitic.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I think is Zionism anti-Semitic?
Ali, we get on to Zionism, but let's we can sit down on the Salam corner next, and we can do that next. But let's stay with Jeremy Corbyn.
That's a very important distinction.
But let's instead of hopping around like frogs, let's stay on one subject. Jeremy Corbyn. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and you tell me if this is anti-Semitic language or these are anti-Semitic things. Yeah. So we started the conversation by talking about associations. So let's begin with an association. Is it? And you tell me whether it's anti-Semitic or not. No. You're not sitting down on the chair.
Let him finish his point. He has the right to finish his point.
You can come back. So
you can disagree with it.
Then Ali, then me, and you can sit down. And then I'll get home to my wife. So. You tell me whether this is anti-Semitic or not. Jews are a peculiar and strange race, and they are behind the movement of all capital and responsible. And there's no war that's sanctioned in Europe without them sanctioning it. Is that an anti-Semitic statement?
Did Corbyn make this statement?
No.
It is an anti-Semitic statement. It is an anti-Semitic statement.
It was written in a book. It was written in a book called Imperialism by J.A. Hobson.
Okay.
Corbyn not only endorsed it, he described it as a great tome. He wrote the foreword to it. He wrote the foreword to this book. So you're talking about associations. This conversation started with I'm friendly with Steve, who you say is supporting Tommy Robinson, and you question my judgment there. So I would reverse this background. Here is, you've got a book of Mein Kampf. The chapter that this appears in is called Economic Parasites of Imperialism. There's 2 minutes. There's another chapter in the book called Imperialism and the Lower Races. Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn. Rajiv, can you just let us talk?
But you can't. Let him finish, please.